Students, in lesson 2.3, we are going to be doing division with two-digit divisors. Our essential question for this lesson is, how can you use base 10 blocks to model and understand division of whole numbers? So what we're going to do today is we're going to do an investigation. So we're doing a hands-on activity. So the materials that we'll need for this investigation is the base 10 blocks. So let's start with our investigation here. There are 156 students in Caryville Middle School chorus. The music director wants the students to stand with 12 students in each row for the next concert. How many rows will there be? So for step A, we need to use base 10 blocks to model the dividend, which is 156. So we're going to do that in class. So we're going to pause the video at this time. But then I want you to make sure that you're taking notes on the quick draw that I'm going to do here in the corner. So now students, a quick draw or a quick drawing is a way to represent the same amount. So we're going to use the square to represent an amount. Then we're going to represent another amount, and then a third amount. So the circle is going to be the ones, the line is going to be tens, and then the square is going to be hundreds. So we're going to model this with base 10 pieces in class, but right now we're going to use a quick draw. So we're going to model the dividend, which is 156. So it's 100, because the 1 is in the hundreds place. And then we're going to use 5 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tens. And then we're going to model 6 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, when we check our drawing, we know that on the side, our drawing is representing our dividend, which is 156. Step B. It says place 2 tens below the hundreds to form a rectangle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cross off 2 tens. And I'm going to place them underneath here to form a rectangle. Next, it says, how many groups of 12 does the rectangle show? So now, this is a little tricky, so this is where you have to pay very, very close attention. The question is asking us, how many groups of 12 does the rectangle show? So we know that there are 10 tens inside of this 100. So we know that this would be 2 more ones to the 10 ones that are in the 10 here. So what we know is that there are 10 groups, and the reason why we know that there are 10 groups are because there are 10 sets within our 100, and then inside of the 10 groups we have 12. So if we went down, we would have 10 plus 2 is 12, 10 plus 2 is 12, 10 plus 2 is 12, and so on until we got to 10 sets of 12. So if we think to ourselves, it says, how much of the dividend is not shown in the rectangle? Well, we can circle in yellow how much of it is not shown in the rectangle. So what is not shown in the rectangle is, I'm sorry boys and girls, I missed one, is 3 tens or 30 and 6 ones or 36. Now in step C, it says combine the remaining tens and ones into as many groups of 12 as possible. And you might say, well, why are we doing groups of 12? Well, students, the reason why we're doing groups of 12 is because that is what we started with here. We took 2 tens and we placed it here. We made 10 groups of 12. So what we're going to do is we're going to redraw this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this down here and I'm going to label it step C. So we have our 10 groups of 12, and then what we're going to do is we're going to now in step C combine the remaining 10s to as many groups of 12. So we have cross off one of those 10s, and then we bring down 2 1s. That's a group of 12. Now let's go back up to our drawing. We have another 10, so we're going to draw the other 10, and then we're going to cross off 2 more 1s. That is also 12. And then we see last we have one more group of 10, and then finally we see 2 1s. So it says, how many groups of 12 are there in total? Well, we know that there were 10 here, groups of 12. This would be 11 groups, 12 groups, 13 groups. So we drew an additional 3 groups of 12. Step D. It says place these groups of 12 on the right of the rectangle to make a larger rectangle. So Ms. G jumped ahead a little bit, students. So C and D, you can see here that we place these additional leftovers on the right side of the rectangle that we drew additionally. Step E says the final rectangle that shows how many groups. So remember, we have 10 groups of 12 here, 11, 12, 13 groups. So there are 13 groups of 12. So there will be 13 rows of students. Now notice, students, in class we're going to be doing this with the base 10 pieces, but at home I don't want you to have to draw out all the little squares of the base 10 pieces. So let's just remind ourselves what we used for the quick drawing. The square represented the hundreds, the stick or the line represented the tens, and the little circle represented the ones. So now we're going on to the draw conclusions. Mathematical practices. It says, explain why you still need to make groups of 12 after step B. So in step B, students, I'm going to put a orange circle around step B. This was step B. So it's asking us, after we do step B, why do we still make groups of 12? So what you'll notice, students, is I redrew step B here in navy blue. So what we have in step B is our 10 groups of 12. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 groups of 12. The divisor is 12, right? Because that's what we made our groups into, groups of 12. The value of the remaining base 10 blocks is greater than 12. So if you look down here in orange, you see that this remainder, or the remaining base 10 blocks, are greater than 12. So that's why we still need to make groups of 12 after step B when we made our rectangle in navy blue. Now on number 2, it says describe how you can use base 10 blocks to model the quotient 176 divided by 16. So we're going to use base 10 blocks to describe how we can use the blocks to model the quotient 176 divided by 16. So what I want you to do first is I want you to draw the dividend, 176. So what we do is we have the 100 block and we add 6 tens to it to make a rectangle. So if we go to the next page, what we're going to do is we're going to use our hundreds blocks, so we're going to cross it off, and then we're going to use 6 tens. So 1 10, 2 tens, 3 tens, 4 tens, 5 tens, 6 tens. We rewrote those tens underneath the square to make a rectangle. Now what we have left is circled in yellow. If we go back to the problem, we see that it says, then combine the remaining 10 and 6 ones into a group of 16. So let's do that. We cross off the 10, we write it down, and then we cross off the 6 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It says, place the group on the right side of the rectangle to show 11 groups of 16. So we can see that there are 10 groups of 16 here, because there's 10 within here, and then there's one more group of 16. So the answer is 11, because we can actually count out. There's 10 groups, one more group, 11 groups of 16. Now we're going to go on to the make connections. It says the two sets of groups of 12 that you found in the investigate are partial quotients. First you found the 10 groups of 12, and then you found 3 more groups of 12. Sometimes you may need to regroup before you can show a partial quotient. So it says you can use a quick picture to record the partial products. Divide 180 divided by 15. So it says model, use base 10 pieces. Step 1, model the dividend. 180 as 108 tens. So we see we have 100 and then we have 5 tens, 3 more tens is 8 tens. It says model the first partial quotient by making a rectangle with the 100 and 5 tens. So that means that we're going to cross off 5 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Record in the record section and cross out the hundreds and tens you used. So we're going to rewrite that. What we see is that we have 10 groups of 15 here. It says the rectangle shows 10 groups of 15, and we can count them out. Step 2. It says the additional groups of 15 cannot be made without regrouping. So what we can think about this in this case, students, is remember how we talked about the lottery? If we have 15 people that bought a lotto ticket, if we only have 3 $10 bills, can we share that equally amongst those people? No, each person can't get a $10 bill. So what we have to do is we have to take what we have left over and regroup. So we're going to trade each of those tens for 10 ones. So the $10 bill, we're going to trade for 10 ones, another 10 ones, another 10 ones, which is 30 ones. Sorry students, I got a little ahead of myself here. What we're going to do is we're going to actually only trade one of the tens for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 ones. So you'll see I rewrote the 2 tens that were left over here, and then what I did was I took all of the ones and I rewrote the 5 ones here and then the 5 ones there. So now I have 10 groups plus 2 groups, which would give us 12 groups. So we see that there are now 2 tens and 10 ones. Step 3, it says decide how many additional groups of 15 can be made from the remaining tens and ones. We know that's 2 groups. The number of groups is the second partial quotient. And what you'll notice is that we have one quotient, and then we have our second partial quotient. It says make your rectangle larger by including these groups of 15. Record in the record section. Cross out the tens and ones used. There are now 12 groups of 15, so 180 divided by 15 is 12. And we can see that reflected by our answer here in the record section. So last, I want you to think about the mathematical practices, math talk, as we close out this lesson. It says explain how your model shows the quotient. So keep in mind, if we talked about partial quotients, how would our model explain the quotient? Be sure to take really good notes and use the quick drawings in your math notebook to help you with modeling two-digit divisors with division.